While no one is watching, the pieces of the puzzle continue to fall into place and satisfyingly click for the Nebraska football program. It all started out with the hiring of Mickey Joseph for the wide receivers coach and passing game coordinator position. Then came the hiring of Mark Whipple and Donovan Raiola. Mark Whipple obviously being the guy who developed Kenny Pickett into a Heisman Trophy contender this season and possibly the first quarterback taken off the board in the NFL draft. Those were big. This right here, Casey Thompson, is also big-time news. Casey Thompson this season at Texas was the main starting quarterback. He unfortunately played for a team with little to no defense, a team that, in year one, Steve Sarkisian is trying to rebuild the culture. He's trying to kind of tear everything down in a manner where he can fix things, but at the same time avoid a complete collapse. And unfortunately, the latter didn't work out. Texas's defense was atrocious. The team completely collapsed in the later half of the season, and Casey Thompson decided that he wanted out and wanted to take his talents elsewhere. And he announced today, after entering the transfer portal in mid-December, that he's taking his talents to Big Red. So there you have it. You have Logan Smothers and Casey Thompson are likely your front-running guys who are going to be competing for that starting position. Casey Thompson is not as flashy as Caleb Williams or Spencer Rattler. I mean, this is probably going to fly under the radar, as I was saying. Not a lot of people are paying attention to the moves that Nebraska has thus far made. And if you haven't known already, I'm very high on Nebraska next year. I'm buying all in, for now at least. Maybe after seeing who's leaving and who's returning officially, seeing some of the spring depth charts and spring practice reports, maybe I'll change my mind. But some of my way too early thoughts are very positive on Nebraska. And I think Thompson is the perfect replacement for Adrian Martinez, he's a heck of an athlete. And he's going to Kansas State, which is fitting because that was the last team that Casey Thompson has played. So that's that. And today we're going to be talking more about Casey Thompson here in a few seconds as well. We're going to be discussing his season statistics and comparing them actually to Kenny Pickett's, because Mark Whipple is the OC and QB coach now. He's going to be developing Casey Thompson this offseason, and I want to compare what Mark Whipple is going to be working with and developing, and I want to compare that specifically to what he already has developed, to what Mark Whipple already has developed. So I really like this move. There's just some general thoughts that we're going to start out with here. And I think that, bringing in a new quarterback who has talent, a guy who honestly, looking at his stats and watching some of the games that he played in, a guy that literally carried his team as much as he could, throwing for 5 TD passes, no picks against Oklahoma, 6 TD passes, only 1 pick in the loss against Kansas. He also rushed for a touchdown in that game. He didn't play the greatest during the Baylor or Oklahoma State game, but at the same time, and those are 2 big games as well, you can't pin it. It's not pin the blame on the quarterback. You can't always play that game. Texas's defense was atrocious. I've probably already mentioned that a few times this video, but their defense was not good. They never, ever helped him out. The offense had to score, and if they didn't, it was probably a guarantee that Texas's offense would kind of just roll over and let the other team score. And that's kind of the case, as I mentioned earlier, because it's year one and you're trying to build something. And when you're taking over for a program that's been busted for a long time, and this is kind of similar to what Scott Frost has been having to deal with, you have to weed things out. The issue, of course, with Frost, as many of you watching this as Husker fans know, is it has taken so long. And the results at the moment don't look promising. Only a 52nd ranked recruiting class. And the top player in that class is not even a top 150 recruit. He's a cornerback named Jaden Gould, and he is ranked 190th in the country. And your top transfer is barely a 4-star, and he's a transfer from Arizona State. You have 4 transfers coming in. I think you have 4, maybe 5 leaving, including Martinez. You only have 14 total commits. Only one of them's a 4-star. It just doesn't look all that good. But I promise you, the pieces right now, the pieces, the foundation that is being built, everything to me seems to be coming together. Remember, I'm a Michigan fan. Everyone thought the world for Michigan was going to end and that Michigan would revert back to what it was in the Rich Rod and Hoke era. Everyone thought Michigan was going to be 6-6 and 7-5. I predicted 8-4. I was more optimistic than most, but I still didn't like the result. But everyone undervalued the staff changes that Harbaugh made, and that's something that I valued a lot. I thought the change of the defense, which is the critical weakness, has been the critical weakness in the last 2 years of the Don Brown era of the Michigan teams, never stopping good offenses. That was all removed. It was like a tumor in the body of my football program. All of it was removed, replaced with new tissue, and it worked beautifully. It's the same thing with Nebraska's offense. They're making good hires. They got a young guy at the O-line position. They hired a well-respected OC in Mark Whipple, like how Michigan hired a well-respected secondary coach in Steve Clinkscale. And Mickey Joseph is a guy that has, worked with them before. Because Mickey Joseph, by working, I mean played, pardon me, which doesn't really relate a lot to what Michigan did. There's not really an alum on the defensive staff. But at the same time, I like to link those two together. And I don't think a lot of people value how having impactful staff changes can really help you build a culture, which Michigan did. They completely rebuilt their culture with the help of that new staff, bringing in new ideas, allowing the head coach to focus on some other things. It was amazing and it worked out, and I think it will work out for Nebraska this upcoming year. But anyway, enough of my chitter chat. I think I'm rambling on a little bit, so let's cut to the point. Focus on Mark Whipple and Casey Thompson, their relationship. Mark Whipple talked about what he wanted in a quarterback, and he used some explicit language that I'm not going to use because otherwise YouTube is going to put the pin on my back and demonetize this video. But he basically said he wanted a guy who can be a jerk, and by that I mean a guy who can push his guys to the limit. A guy who isn't soft, who isn't afraid to confront and lead his men. But by a jerk, I don't mean just, a guy that is incapable of leading. An entitled, a guy who thinks that he is the Heisman when he actually isn't. A prime example of that would be Graham Mertz. I think Spencer Rattler could also fit into that category as well. He wants a guy with the right mindset. Mindset to Whipple, that's what I got from watching and reading what he wanted in a QB. Mindset seems to come first and foremost. So I don't know what Casey Thompson's mindset is necessarily, but I'm going to trust the staff on that one. But let's talk about the statistics. Casey Thompson's career statistics are listed on the screen. 185 out of 290 pass completions versus attempts. He completes 63.8% of his passes. He's thrown in his career for 2,422 yards, 8.4 yards per pass. He's thrown for 30 touchdowns, only 9 interceptions. He has a 161.9 passer rating. This year, Casey Thompson threw for 165 out of 261, completed 63.2% of his passes. He threw for 2,113 yards, 8.1 yards per pass, 24 touchdown passes. All 9 of his picks came in this year. He was also sacked 16 times. So I do think it will be critical. Having, a defense that you can kind of lean on to win you games will help take pressure off the QB, and pressure can result in mistakes. And I think for Thompson and a lot of other QBs, it certainly did. But also Nebraska has to really focus on building that O-line, because what happened with Martinez this year, where he got sacked a record number of times in his career, is unacceptable. You cannot let a talent like Martinez, or even a guy like Casey Thompson, get sacked that much. It completely impedes his ability to play well, and it even at points, it demoralizes him into impeding his will to want to play well, because he knows that he is not protected. So, his 2021 season, he finished with a 154.7 passer rating, which is better than anything Martinez has had at Nebraska. I think his highest was in the 140s, and that was this year. He arguably had his best year as a quarterback at Nebraska this season. Martinez did. Casey Thompson also rushed for 157 yards this season, 2.9 yards per carry, and 4 touchdowns with a long of 41. So he can run. He has some athleticism. From the stat sheet, it doesn't look like anything that Martinez has done at Nebraska, but Martinez is, again, a heck of an athlete. I think he's a lot more talented than people give him credit for, but he was thrusted in a bad situation since he was like 18 years old, and I just think he needed a change of mindset. He didn't want to go through his third coordinator, which is understandable, and now he's at Kansas State, which is funny because that's the last team that Casey Thompson faced off against. So that's just a rundown of Casey Thompson's stats, and now let's compare them to the most recent quarterback in Kenny Pickett that Mark Whipple developed. Kenny Pickett's career passing statistics. He has completed 1,045 passes out of 1,674 attempts. He completes 62.4% of his passes, throws for 12,303 yards, 7.3 yards per pass, 81 touchdowns, 32 interceptions. He's been sacked 114 times. And this year in 2021, he actually was sacked 29 times. Pitt's O-line not being the prettiest thing in the world. So despite having pressure, Whipple has taught Pickett to be successful, to be a good quarterback, to be a near Heisman, an NFL caliber quarterback without having a great offensive line. He finished with a 165.3 passer rating. He also rushed for 241, 2.5 yards per carry, 5 rushing touchdowns with a long of 58, which was the infamous fake slide, which was an awesome play. He has a career 809 rushing yards in 5 seasons. Pickett does. Pickett's most recent year was, he completed 334 passes out of 497 attempts. 67.2% of his passes were complete. 4,319 passing yards, 8.7 yards per pass. 42 touchdown passes, 7 interceptions. The 165.3 passer rating was this year's. His overall was actually a 136.3, which is listed on the screen. So a dramatic jump in year 5. Now that may send some alarm bells because Mark Whipple was the OC in 2019 and 2020 for Pitt, where Pickett did not get above a 129.6 passer rating. So that may ring some alarm bells for you, but I will remind you that Casey Thompson was a 4-star recruited by Texas, and Texas, as we all know, recruits and brings in a lot better talent than Pittsburgh does. Pickett also went through, I think, 2 or 3, including Whipple, offensive coordinators, so having to go through different guys, change up some of your mechanics and other things, learn from a new mentor that can be hard. What I think matters was the final product that Whipple produced. 42 touchdown passes, 7 interceptions. That's a 6-to-1 TD interception ratio in his final year. Pickett this year is a senior. Casey Thompson, I think, is a junior with the extra year of COVID eligibility if he wants to use it. So, listen, I think looking at those stats, looking at their career stats, that you have what I would say is a diamond in the rough, because Casey Thompson, according to 24/7 Sports, is listed as a mid-tier 3-star, according to their transfer portal rankings. And I look at his stats and the situation he was put at in Texas, and I think that you got a steal. And I think it's going to work out, and I think you should be very excited. You shouldn't expect him to, I think, be the dark horse Heisman candidate that everyone wanted Martinez to be. That prediction, I don't know where that came from, but he doesn't have to be. He does not have to be that for Nebraska to get 8, 9, maybe even go so far out as to say 10 wins, which your schedule, being easier than in previous years, could actually provide for. He doesn't need to be that. He needs to be good or great and doesn't need to make some of the same mistakes that Martinez made, which a lot of those were from him trying to carry his team and be the offense. So I think it's critical that a supporting cast is developed around Thompson, a good offensive line, disciplined receivers, good running backs, and most importantly, letting Whipple work with him, which of course will happen because he's the QB coach. What am I even saying? All these things, if he has a supporting cast, Whipple's coaching will work wonders on this kid. At least in my opinion. So again, it was I think it's a really good move. And I think that despite the low rankings in the recruiting class, I honestly believe that it doesn't matter. You have a guy from the portal. He is, in a certain sense, a temporary fix. But I think it's very important that Scott Frost gets something jump-started now if he wants to keep his job. And everything to me just seems to be falling into place. And that's all I have to say here. That's all I have to say for this video, really. So if you like this video, like it, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. I mean, do you think this is going to work out at all? I think it is, but you could disagree. And I love people that disagree. I love talking with them down in the comments. So if you have a disagreement, still I encourage you to still subscribe, and I'll talk about it with you and talk about why you disagree with it, because conversation is amazing. It's what makes the sport of college football so fun and entertaining, and just, yeah. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys around.